hunting,
fishing,
cooking,
camping,
conservation,
travel,
gardening,
photography, family.
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 This is the Outdoor Rules Podcast. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. Mike here. I am really excited to bring you this episode today. It's one we've been talking about for a while. Caitlin and I talked about this on a few episodes back when we were talking about the episodes coming up, and I am lucky enough to be joined by my neighbor, John. John, introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm John Brown.
So when Caitlin and I moved to Santa Fe, it was just about this time in 2014, so 12 years ago now. And we landed in a rental, as you know you do when you move to a new place. Wasn't in the best part of town, but it was all right. And after about a year, Caitlin had also landed a great job, and we started looking for a place to buy. And we were kind of lucky because we came into the market right as things were really picking up. But we looked at a ton of places, and we ended up making offers on 4 different homes that we, for one reason or another, we didn't get any of those for. And the 5th place that we looked at was on this road called Brown Castle Ranch Road. And we drove out here to drive by it, and it told us to turn into this RV park, which we did, but we were like, oh, this seems a little weird. And then we drove through the RV park and back into this just beautiful spot kind of on top of this little bluff or mesa back here. And we just fell in love instantly. And I think that on that first trip, I think maybe we ran into you, John. You probably don't recall this at all.
Oddly, Mike, I do. I recall the whole thing because my stepsister's house is for sale. She and her husband decided to move south to a warmer place like Tucson or Phoenix, and they were up for sale. And they had had a few people look at the house, but the fact you had to drive through an RV park, and then it descended into a rough dirt road. And then you had to go past basically our junkyard. And then a little bit further past, you saw this house that you pulled up. And I was asked by my mother at the time to say, hey, can you keep an eye out in case somebody shows up to look at the house? So I'm in a dirty welding shirt because I was welding on some major project for the RV park. And I had my hood on, and I walked over there, and as I recall, I still had my welding helmet on.
Probably.
And Mike looked at me, and I was like, this is going to scare him off for sure. And the more we talked instantly, the more you could see he felt perfectly at home on a dirt road with a neighbor that's already meet you with a welding helmet to show you the house. And it's like, it fit really well. It was perfect, and none of us have regrets about that at all.
Oh, that's good to hear. Caitlin and I have absolutely no regrets. So we ended up buying the house. I think it's kind of been a match made in heaven. We love being here. We love having you guys as neighbors. You are sort of infinitely interesting as a family, I think, which is, part of you're great neighbors, which is why I wanted to have you on the podcast, but also just kind of an amazing history. But I wanted to start real quick in the present day. John, what do you do professionally and in your spare time? You are one of the busiest and most industrious people that I've ever met. So just give me the short version of who John Brown is now.
Industrious person. Okay, so I'm industrious enough to change his grammar. But now, so I built the RV park from scratch. It's a 100-unit RV park up on a ridge on Homestead property. We built it. We started in 1995 getting a permit, and I was working for New Mexico OSHA as an OSHA inspector. In the meantime, jumping back to the present, that's what we run. So Greg, my wife and Tim, my two sons and my wife, they're kind of oversee and kind of run the park with our staff. And our staff is hired employees, and they're very good. They don't need a whole lot of help, so it works pretty well. It's a pretty well-run organization. And it's well-run enough that it allows me to keep my day job, which I keep trying to retire from, but they won't let me. But I am the safety director for a company called Bradbury Stamm Construction. And Bradbury Stamm Construction is Mexico's biggest vertical contractor. We do water plants, wastewater plants, schools, museums. We're building the new Georgia O'Keeffe Museum. So I run around the state in their truck and basically direct their safety stuff. And I do it on an on-call basis, so I have a lot of time to be home. But it's still, a mentally stimulating thing to go to big construction sites and look at big cranes and say, yeah, you can do that. No, you can't. So that's a lot of fun. And then the other business we have is a company called Santa Fe Vacuum Excavation, which we find utilities for contractors mostly. And the middle son, Tim, he runs that with his employees, and that's all right here. Mm-hmm. So that's what we do. In the meantime, I try to do art, ride motorcycles, and dance tango in the RV park building.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even have that on my list.
He forgot that.
Tango.
He's allergic to dancing.
I am allergic to dancing.
Nothing like having your hands full, Mike.
Yeah. Well, I feel like you kind of made all that sound somehow less than what it really is, like with the art part, because you guys do, you are constantly busy doing mostly metal art. Is that where the focus is?
Yes. And we had a junkyard here on the property. My dad had 800 junk cars when he died, and I've been cleaning up ever since. And with that, we're always falling over some piece of scrap metal. Instead of just getting rid of it, it's like, we could make something out of that. So next thing you know, I'm looking at something like I have this big heart out of a piece of pipe I crushed with an excavator on a commercial job site. And it looked like a heart, but it fell over for 4 or 5 years before I decided I could put that on a rock and paint it. And it looks like a broken heart. And it's a big sculpture, and it's like 5 feet high. And people are always taking pictures of it and Facebooking it to all the family and everyone else. So we have a lot of other stuff. I have a beer bottle tree, which everybody really loves.
Yeah.
And if you look up beer bottle trees or wine bottle trees, they're usually pretty stiff and regular and organized. This one is big.
Right.
And you can now find it on Facebook, and you can find it on our website. It's like 17 feet high. And I'm proud to say I emptied every bottle. And conned my wife into cleaning all the labels off.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah, but I'm always looking. I'm talking to Mike right now. I'm looking out the window, and I see the stainless steel rod thrown away from a construction site with copper pipe that I made leaves out of. So I welded stainless steel to copper, and I have this wonderful pampas grass metal sculpture waving at the wind as I'm talking to you all.
Yeah, the RV park is absolutely beautiful and interesting, in part because it's filled with your family and with art from some other artists, right?
Yes.
And then one of your, did you only have one brother? Was Willie your only brother?
Yeah, I only had one brother. Yes.
When we moved on to the ranch, you had a living brother who also lived here, and he has since passed away, sadly, but he was really into old cars and machines, right?
Mostly old machines, like hit and miss motors, mostly 100 years old, before they invented carburetors. Some of his collection, they didn't even have a spark plug. And he restored most of those. He's gathered them up, and we still have a collection of like some 50 of them.
Right.
And most of them he actually made run. Some of them did not run for 70 years. And now you can go out there and put a little oil in them and some propane, and they'll go pow, 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 pow,
right.
pow for you. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's super cool. You got all this metal art that your family has made and a lot of Willie's collection of old machines. Hit and miss motors and bulldozers, some really cool. Like there's a World War II Navy bulldozer out there.
Yes. And
yeah.
And then there's a antique road grader, the kind that the Seabees used in the World War II to grade the Pacific Islands for airstrips. We built the park with that because we were too broke by the time they got all the permitting to build the park to hire a contractor. So we restored a 1942 road grader and built a park with it.
Right. So you mentioned your dad. I think that how you all came to be here on this land is a really interesting part of your story. So can you kind of walk the family story back to where your folks came from and then how they landed here on the south side of Santa Fe?
So it's probably better to start with the beginning of the story, which we could probably have to do another podcast because it's too long of a story. But essentially in the 1930s, my mother's family came to New Mexico from Chicago strictly because of financial needs. So they were in Santa Fe around 1935, and the Homestead Act had been repealed by Congress. And my grandfather had read in the newspaper that Congress had repealed it and a certain cutoff date. So he said, wow, that's free land, I think. And being from Chicago, they really didn't think about that. So he had to kind of run down to the library and research it. And whoa. So he ran into the courthouse, the same place it is today, downtown Santa Fe, and said, is there any land to homestead near Santa Fe? And they had several parcels way out in Santa Fe County, but they only had two that were near town. And one is northeast of town on a hill full of gullies and washes and trees and not flat enough for a man from Chicago. And he said, no one had ever farmed this. So he came out to this other scrap of land on a ridge. And the reason it was here is because it didn't have a road to it. It was all landlocked. The other parcel in a few years became where the current governor's mansion sits.
Oh, really?
So they probably would have blown that money.
Right.
This piece was much poorer. And so my mother grew up on this property. They had to live on it. In 1940, they got a deed from Franklin Delano Roosevelt. It was signed, so it's a patented property. And they built an old house, and they put in a well with a windmill, and they had jobs in town. But they made it, and they got the land. And it was 120 acres, just a scrap of a homestead. So my mother finally went to college, became a lawyer, UNM, and everybody moved away. And my grandmother rented the house out to people that had horses for several years. And then my dad and my mom, which owned another property by the Santa Fe airport, they sold that property and they said, let's move to my mom's land. So they moved out here and built her a house. And, my dad built her a great big 2-story adobe-looking thing, and she instantly said, you built me a castle. So we named the whole thing Brown Castle. And then she got some flair and named it Brown Castle Ranch. We had one cow.
Right. But that's the origin of Brown Castle Ranch.
So we've been here ever since, and that was 1972.
And so that was, as you mentioned, right at the very end of the Homestead Act that they were able to.
I think it was like 2 weeks, according to my mother.
Was how much time they had left.
Yeah.
It had already
2 weeks. It was supposed to expire in 2 weeks. So he ran down to the courthouse, came out here, saw the property, went back, and filed the paperwork and got in before the deadline.
And how? I mean, you had to go from a homestead claim on the land, you have to prove it up. How did they do that?
I don't know that. They never bothered telling me that. At that point, my mother was 6 when they homesteaded it. So she remembers the stories, and she kind of turned them into, I homesteaded this when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Her parents really kind of helped a whole bunch. But I never got those details. But apparently you did something, you filed your application, and you went and lived on it. And if you didn't do your 5 years, it reverted to the government.
Right.
Now, most of the failed homesteads didn't revert to the federal government. They reverted to the state and county for back taxes. That's why we have so much raw state land. It's actually homesteads that failed and was converted for tax arrears to state lands, which became school trust lands. So most of the grazing in New Mexico comes from that.
And why do you think? I mean, obviously, this parcel was left at the end, and Santa Fe has been occupied since long before the United States was a country. So I would imagine that there was a lot of homestead claims around here during that time. Why do you think this parcel was left?
This parcel was left because it was landlocked. On one side, it had the Jarrett Ranch, and that's adjacent to your house, Mike, on the north side. And it surrounded everybody and had this little island in there. And the Jarrett family kind of treated it as, well, that's ours also.
It was part of their ranch.
Okay, yeah, it's part of their ranch, but, it wasn't technically, so they were kind of, and they actually had guys running sheep on it. And my grandfather came out and started fencing it, and had a guy named Armijo get kind of excited when he couldn't run a sheep across our property. And so they had to get the local sheriff to remind Mr. Armijo, this is back, like 1936.
Right.
You can't really, it's this guy's property now, okay? You can't,
right.
Mr. Armijo, cool it, you can't do what you've been doing for 200 years.
Yeah, it was sort of that boundary between the Wild West and the it
was touchy.
The modern era of land
so,
ownership.
As a peacemaking deal, they just east of Mike's house, they killed a couple of sheep and had a great big barbecue with all the sheep herders and patched up with my grandfather and my grandmother. And after that, they went around the property. But there was property out here, but mostly they were 640-acre tracts because you could not get enough water. And this is just some funny scrap that nobody really wanted, because if you're going to homestead, you wanted to try to do 640-acre contiguous property rather than not. And so it was just a forlorn piece on a ridge. And the current water well thinking was they'll never drill a well deep enough there because it's on top of this ridge. Turns out it's the most gorgeous place for an RV park.
Yeah, it really is. We have views here to the north of the Sangre de Cristos, and then we can see the Ortiz Mountains right to the south. I mean, you see the Jemez off to the west and the Sandias. I mean, you have mountain views in almost every direction from the top of this ridge.
Yes, we do. So if you want to see what it looks like, go to Santa Fe Skies RV Park and check out our picture page, and you'll see the views.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot, and they, oddly enough, you mentioned people thought that you wouldn't be able to drill a well deep enough to get water, but you can. There's good water here.
Oh yeah, there is. So it wasn't until like 1948 or so that they actually had better drilling machines in the area. But the local concept was you'll never drill a well deep enough. Why bother? So you build them down in the valleys and you'll get some water. And then by the mid-40s, people showed up with truck drills. And then right after World War II, everybody was able to figure out how to drill a well. The war effort, basically mechanized New Mexico in ways they'd never seen before.
Your family has kind of an interesting history here as well in government and in some other ways. And maybe I have some of these stories confused, but was it your grandmother who worked for the Forest Service?
My grandmother in the Depression came with her husband from Chicago, and he was a newspaper man, and all the jobs dried up in Chicago. So they had met in Santa Fe years before, like 1921 or so, and on a Sunday afternoon down at the cathedral. And he was driving to the Los Angeles with a friend just out of college break, had money, driving his car on the dirt Route 66. And then because they were Irish Catholics, they stopped at the cathedral and went to Mass, and then they hung out for the garden party, and he met this woman from Chicago who became my grandmother several years later because she moved back to meet him. And then they moved out here broke, and they went to Raton, and he got managing directorship of the newspaper in Raton, which went bankrupt in 6 months. So they moved to Santa Fe broke in a car, and he was raised with money. He was a silver spoon kind of kid. And they ended up at the parish doorstep and the orphanage, and they put the 3 kids immediately in the orphanage because they needed to have housing. And the church did that because they were all church people. And then they found a place for someone to live, and they got going and got on their feet. And my grandmother immediately started doing typing and accounting for the nuns at which is now currently Christus St. Vincent's Hospital. So at night, And then she applied because she had a degree, and she'd also had been bank examiner. That's another story for the podcast in the future. Anyway, she was an educated woman from Chicago with an associate's degree and could read and write, and already had been working in New Mexico before as a professional for state government. So it was pretty simple for her to have contacts in Santa Fe, and they referred her to the federal government's Forest Service, which was very small operations. And they needed an executive kind of person that could fill that role. And she took over. And it took her a long, long time, but she became the head of the entire Arizona, New Mexico Forest Service Public Relations Department. So when she died, the Albuquerque Journal headline says, "The mother of Smokey Bear dies." And so we went through all that stuff. But yes, she was considered by the Albuquerque Journal to be the one that put the whole ad thing together from the 40s with an actual bear they caught in Lincoln National Forest. But the heroes of that story are really Game and Fish and some other people. But she's the architect behind the scenes.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that is...
So that's what she did.
Right.
And then she had her kids all go to UNM and get advanced degrees at UNM. So I think my uncle had a PhD in speech pathology. My mother had a Juris Doctorate, so a lawyer. And the other one was a PhD in physical therapy.
Wow.
Yeah. And this is all by 1951.
Right. And I really want to talk about your mom, but the Smokey Bear connection is really interesting, obviously, to Caitlin and I, as, you know, folks who work in the conservation field and in government. So that story, your mom is essentially the head of communications or public relations.
No, my grandmother.
I'm sorry.
My
Your
my
grandmother.
mom's mom, yes.
Right. At the time when the fire happens near Lincoln, New Mexico. So if you're not familiar with any of this and the geography of New Mexico, Santa Fe, how would you describe where we are? We're in the north.
We're north central.
Right.
And you would say the central southern mountains would be Ruidoso, is the town you'd find on a map.
In the Sacramento mountain range.
Yeah, but pretty much look up Ruidoso. It's where the Texans come to ski. Then from there, go about 40 miles, crow flight northeast, in a little town of Lincoln and Capitan and the Capitan Mountains. There's a big forest fire there. And they found this bear cub clinging to a tree. If you want, go to any Forest Service office and ask for the Smokey Bear comic book, and you'll get the whole story.
Right.
They still publish it.
Yeah.
Last time I got it was in off of Lake Superior in Wisconsin.
Oh, yeah.
To a Forest Service thing over there. You guys still have that comic? And they, sure enough, yeah, we do. No one ever asks for them anymore. And they're like a bundle, about 50 of them.
And so when that happens, which, by the way, Lincoln is also plays a big role in the whole Billy the Kid story. If you didn't know that's largely a New Mexico story, it is, but that's a whole nother thing. They've had a big wildfire there. They find the bear cub, and essentially there is a PR or a marketing campaign that grows around Smokey Bear, and they fly the bear. I believe they fly him from Lincoln up here to Santa Fe, correct?
Worse than that. So the arranger, and nobody really is sure. It's either Elliot or Elmer Barker is the one that was working that area. And they were both pretty famous rangers in the northern part of the state. And one of them called up my grandmother and said, hey, they found this bear. This bear had then already been in hands of the veterinarian from Capitan, and his daughter was taking care of the bear, and the game and fish people, they got all the notoriety for that. But in the background, the Forest Service said, well, what can we do? So my grandmother called the Madison Avenue people back in Washington that had already started the Smokey Bear campaign 10 or 15 years before. So it was an ongoing campaign, and said, hey, we got a mascot. So eventually they actually flew the bear to the Washington National Zoo. And my dad always tormented his mother-in-law, my grandmother, for locking that bear up in Washington. He also claimed that's why we were born with bare feet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that is an amazing sort of family story, I think, to have been part of the whole Smokey Bear.
Yeah, and as validation and evidence, we actually still, I think my wife has folded up someplace the original copy of the Albuquerque Journal headline, been cut out.
Yeah.
It's been saved since 1961 or something.
Right. And so then you mentioned your mom when Caitlin and I moved on to the ranch. I think our closest neighbor was your mom, the home that she lived in, and she was a wonderful old lady, really fun to talk to. Called her Flossie, right? Go into her story a little bit because she was really an interesting person.
She was the oldest kid, and when they came from Raton after the paper went broke, she was sick, and they thought she had tuberculosis, and that was the time when everybody had tuberculosis in the Northeast and the upper North Midwest. To us New Mexicans, that you have to distinguish that Midwest because anything east of Las Vegas, New Mexico, is really the Midwest. So Kansas is for sure in the heart of it. You guys don't even, Midwesters like Pennsylvania, they don't even, Kansas, oh no, that's desert, with corn. Weird. Anyway, she was sick, but it turns out she'd been drinking raw milk and brucellosis, and I think that's something contracted from cattle. And she was put in the hospital as part of the orphanage thing. So she was favored because there was a woman who was a volunteer who was a tuberculosis patient, and her name escapes me, and I'm sure we have it written down someplace, but she was a French tutor. And so she started teaching my mother, who was 6 years old in a hospital bed, all about French, being a Catholic, being a girl, the whole wide world that's more than New Mexico. So by the time she left and departed from the hospital, my mother could speak French and had a worldly view of all sorts of things from this tutor by accident.
Wow.
Yeah, who eventually died of TB in New Mexico. So my mother never forgot that she learned more from that one person than any person in her whole life. Mm. And that set her all through the rest of her life as having this one woman who didn't know her from anything, just started talking to her and started tutoring her French for free because she was bored to tears in the hospital.
Yeah.
Amazing.
That is
and then
amazing.
She became an attorney, and she was the first attorney in New Mexico. And she has books on all that. And Ann Bingham, who was Senator Jeff Bingham's wife, when we were at a thing in UNM once, she said, and I'm the first lawyer to be invited to a firm. And my mother stood up and said, not really. I just Judge Kiker's firm in 1952, Nobody remember anything like that. So she was feisty. And
she was feisty.
She was feisty.
Yeah, I like that about her.
But she was the first New Mexico elementary school, New Mexico middle school, New Mexico high school, going to UNM Law, and passing the New Mexico bar. She's the first New Mexico woman product to do all that.
Entirely New Mexican.
Entirely Mexican. So we have a lot of other women that were ahead of her that did it, but they were, they came from another thing. Their husband was a judge or something like that, and they learned all the law stuff. They went past the bar. Or they came from California or New York, and they already had law school behind them and a degree. And they came and they finished up at UNM. But she's the first total New Mexico product for a woman to pass the whole thing.
Right.
And she never let us forget that.
Well, I wouldn't have either. I mean,
I'm the first.
What a thing to be proud of. I mean, holy smokes.
And then she also has the first public law award for her civil service. So she was general counsel of health department forever. It was health environment, then in health. And so she did that. She was also the first attorney to take on New Mexico's Child Support Bureau and actually do child support enforcement and actually take deadbeat dads to court.
Wow.
Yeah. And so from that, she got promoted in the health department as wow, if you can actually have a lawyer,
right,
a government lawyer that actually is suing people and taking them to court and winning.
What a cool thing.
Yeah. So then they promoted her to where she could do less harm.
And do I have this wrong, or was she also somehow involved in the adjudication of land grants here?
No. She got her client, Williams Turkey Farm in Tuskegee, out of the AMDOT big water case. So the big water case that we use currently, actually, this is what a connection here. Bradbury Stamm, the guys I'm with, is the building subcontractor and part of the infiltration wells down at the river for CDM Smith, which is working for the Bureau of Reclamation to build a huge Pewaukee Valley drinking water plant. So we've been out there 4 years building stuff for them. And I find it odd that my mother got her client out of that lawsuit, which has gone on since the 50s, about water and people taking water and who gets it. And so where's the water rights? And the only real answer is that they come up with a regional water system created and funded by the federal government. And so she got them out of that a long time ago. So that's the story you heard there.
I see. Yeah, I mean, New Mexico's got this, like all Western states, this sort of deep legal history with water rights, which is what you're talking about, and how water's distributed. And
there's paper water, and then there's wet water.
Right.
So paper water is where all the fights.
Right.
The wet water is what we don't see much of.
Right, which means you can own water on paper.
But it doesn't mean you got any. Right.
It doesn't mean it exists as wet water.
And if you do have wet water, you better be very, very careful because someone else is going to try to make it their paper water.
Right.
And so that's always been one of the problems with New Mexico is they have this beneficial use thing, which didn't happen until it was became a state. And before it became a state, it had always been land grant and Spanish colonial and then Mexican government rules. And then once it became a U.S. state and a territory, they actually said, wait a second. So if you weren't putting water to use, someone else could claim it.
Right.
So in other words, if you had a nice little creek in northern New Mexico with trout and you were doing a little bit of alfalfa, but you had way more water going through than you were farming alfalfa, a railroad could come through or a logging operation and claim it because it would make more money than your hay farm. And then they could actually claim it. That's the beneficial use.
Right.
So a lot of those people got their property, their land stripped. And more to the point, the southern part of the state, the big farms down there, the chili farms of Las Cruces and Mesilla Valley and Hatch Valley, a lot of that is they forbid people from impounding water in the northern part of the state. And so you had to let it go downstream for them to use. That's part of that beneficial use law.
Yeah, it's a crazy, complicated.
Arizona has done it, and it's still going to be. That's why there's so many swimming pools in Phoenix.
Right.
So that they keep using water, otherwise someone else will claim it.
Yeah, it's a crazy system, but that would definitely
it will have to change. The wet water will come to a pass.
It seems like it will.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, and then your mom retired here on the ranch, and how did things sort of grow? I mean, there was a homestead house that you talked about, right? And then the ranch and your family sort of expanded.
So my 3 siblings, my mother, my uncle, my aunt, were all given 35 acres. They had acquired a road in the middle of the 30s. They bought it from the Thornburg family, 30-foot wide strip all the way to Highway 14. And Mike's never seen that because it got bulldozed before he showed up. But we had this parallel strip, and then the Thornburgs owned the other property. So my grandmother kept the remaining strip, which was a little 20-acre chunk, and it's kind of a dog leg. Kind of like you take Oklahoma and you twist it around so the panhandle's to the southwest, and the bulk of the state is the other way. It's kind of flip it over, and that's kind of what the property looked like. So we have this strip up here for an RV park. My dad moved out here in 72 with my mom when she said, let's go live on my 35 acres. He, within 6 weeks, decided he could not stand the fact that he had to drive through his mother-in-law's 20 acres. And it just, I remember him starting on me early on that. And I'm buying her out. And one day I was in college. I found out that my dad and my mom had bought my grandmother out. So she had retirement income. And so now my mother had 55 acres. And so when she retired, she says, I want to do something that makes the land pay for itself, but we can't sell it. And she says, you got to figure that out. So I started figuring out what could do. Don't build houses because you sell them. So what could I possibly get through county government? And by this time, this was like 1992, and we had been zoned. We had 4 or 5 different master plan changes because Santa Fe County, because everybody's trying to move here, and it's going to just go crazy. So they clamped down on everything as much as they possibly could. And so it was a struggle to get it through, a real struggle. So,
yeah.
But anyway, so mother built a house. Then my sister wanted a house, so she gave her 5 acres. So my sister started a house. Then my wife and I moved back from Las Cruces and came back from Egypt. And my dad said, if you have babies, I'll give you 5 acres. He didn't tell me that. He told my wife that. So I've been here ever since.
Right.
You know, I've been hostage. A great way to be. So eventually, we figured out how to build an RV park. But yeah, we all lived here. So we have 1, 2, 3 houses. 2 sons live on the property, and my wife and I, and 1 granddaughter is being raised here. So 4 generations have grown up here, and another one's on the way.
Right, and then you've got some cousins.
Yeah, they're east on the other 35 acres.
Right.
So Mike is surrounded by brown connections somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caitlin and I always tell people, like, and we don't mean this in an insulting way, it's a little bit like we live in a family commune.
Yeah,
but we're the only non-family on the commune.
Well, we actually kind of run it kind of like a commune.
I agree.
Everybody shares everything, so it's kind of communistic that way.
It kind of is.
It's all owned by the state, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, and I always, like, I tell people my neighbors are the kind of people that own things like backhoes and tell you that if you can find it, you can use it.
Right.
You know,
and if you look for a missing ladder, you go to Mike's house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, and I remember one time you told me, I asked you about using the backhoe, and you said, yeah, sure, go ahead and use it. And I said, I'll make sure to bring it back to wherever I find it. And you said, as long as you leave the keys in it, we'll find the backhoe and get it when we need it. Yeah, so I do always take it back to where I find it, but I would imagine if I didn't, it wouldn't be that big of a deal.
It's not that big of a deal. It's kind of it's kind of its own little compound.
It's amazing.
Big compound. Yeah.
I mean, Caitlin, we've just been going through this bathroom remodel, and it's a 2nd floor thing, and probably 3 times now I've come over to get the backhoe because we have all this construction debris, from doing demolition, and it's like, do you have any idea how hard it would be if we couldn't just haul this out on our little balcony and throw it in the backhoe bucket versus having to carry all this old broken tile and everything down the steps?
I'm happy to help you with mechanization.
Oh man, it's so nice. and so it is amazing, and all of the neighbors are great. And at one point, I feel like one of the things that Caitlin and I contributed to the ranch here, we had these 2 dogs when we moved in, and they had puppies, and one of the we still have Newt, our black dog is still here. You had a puppy for a little while.
Yep.
Tim's got one of the other males out of that. So like, it's fun up until Newt got busted by the police. He was pretty much free reign all across the ranch.
He's gotten too free.
Yeah, right. Well, and I think that's part of what's happening is, you guys were kind of down here because as Santa Fe lays out, the main part of the city, the old city, is up against the Sangre de Cristos. What, about 10 miles as the crow flies to our north, more or less?
Yes.
And we're down on the south end of town. You mentioned Highway 14, which is the Turquoise Trail Highway that goes down through Madrid and Cerrillos and some of the old communities sort of south of Santa Fe. And so we're down here on the south end, which was the less developed part of Santa Fe for sure.
Oh, sure. This is just this barren area that nobody wanted because it didn't have any trees. It's just windy. It didn't look so great. But the reality is we're right in smack dab in the path of where Santa Fe County can grow.
Right.
Because if you go to the east, it's all National Forest Service. What isn't a Forest Service is already developed and platted and fancy homes. And then you have Nambay Pueblo, Tesuque Pueblo reservations, San Alfonso on the northern part of the community. And then you've got Las Campanas, a great big ranch that got turned into $1 million homes and spread, and that's all zoned out. And then you have BLM land and the Caja del Rio and the Rio Grande del Norte Monument. Part of that complex is here. So the only path to grow is really south and southwest.
Right.
So towards the prisons on some state land and where the massive Jarrett Ranch has been chopped up. But they still have 6,000 acres that the Thompson family has that they can actually develop in there. So that's the only place. So we're going to be a little island, surrounded by suburbia,
right,
in my lifetime, and I couldn't imagine that 15 years ago.
Well, no, I mean, I think even 5 years ago, it was a little bit hard to imagine. I mean, this growth, it really is in the last 18 months or 2 years when things have really started to pop up around us, and now just in the last 6 months, the construction is close enough that
it's weird because when I was trying to build a measly 100-unit RV park, I was restricted to 6 acre feet of water, and we had to fight for it and buy water rights. And now they're having 500 homes to the southeast of us and a whole bunch of apartments. Where are they getting the water from? So I mean, it's funny how politics change. In the 90s, we didn't have enough water to do anything. And now, with bigger droughts, global warming, drier reservoirs, shrunken Lake Powell, Albuquerque taking whatever it can, we suddenly have water for all this other stuff.
Yeah, I know. It's
curious.
It is curious how that water will
or the political winds change.
Yeah,
maybe the water didn't change,
but
just the political winds change.
Somewhere that wet water and that paper water will come in conflict with each other. So.
Yes.
That's a bit of a concern.
I think so.
One thing you mentioned was Egypt. When you and Karen came back from Egypt, talk about that just a little bit. How did you end up in the Middle East?
Well, that's one of those. I think I'll turn this around, and really, the great accomplishments are I've stayed married to the same woman for 45 years. We got lucky right away. We met the third date. She moved in. She's never left.
Yeah.
Okay. Never left. Kind of like 45 years. My God, is she ever going to leave? No, hardly. No, it's been wonderful.
You better hope not.
So within 3 months, I actually was offered a job in Egypt. We'd sold a bunch of farm machinery when I was living in Las Cruces. I was working for an international harvester dealership. And we sold a bunch of machinery over there. And then the professor in charge said, I need somebody to go to Egypt for me. I said, oh, really? Well, I just got married. Well, she could tag along, but I really need someone to go to Egypt, like right away. Like, why? Well, they unloaded $1 million worth of farm machinery on the docks and it's being pilfered away, and nobody will go touch it because all the professors over there say it's not their job. I need somebody who knows machinery and can read a packing list. You're it. And I said, well, I don't have a passport. We already started that process. Really? Yeah, when do you want to be there? Next Wednesday. Wednesday? I can't even quit my job that quick. And I just got married. Well, tell her she'll come along. And I said, okay. And so I said, okay. And, went home that night and said, I just took a job in Egypt. and sure enough, she went along and came back. And we got back 5 months later and took a tour through a honeymoon trip through Europe on the train. My mom flew over there and thankfully paid for everything.
Oh, nice.
And came home and didn't know we were going and thinking maybe we'll go live in Colorado. And my dad said, I'll give you 5 acres, have kids. And so we've been here ever since. So it's serendipity that way. But that's what we did there. But Karen is from a little town outside of Moline, Illinois. So she's another Midwesterner.
Yeah.
So, but going to Egypt was a big eye opener.
How long were you there?
5 months.
5
months. I had to move $1 million worth of machinery from Alexandria. I was 24. All the way 900 miles upriver. I had to get all the machinery running, put on trucks, shipped, hire truckers, not speaking any Arabic, get everything tied down, get everything sorted out, and send agricultural mechanics that had been posted at those stations. They were on temporary duty to learn how to run the equipment. So we were training guys that had never driven anything in their life, how to drive a tractor and adjust a plow. Oh, it was crazy. But we had 5 months to get all the machinery out of this compound and off the harbor. So, yeah, it was really funny. It was one of those places. where they told me you need 10 pounds every morning to get through the security guard at the harbor. So they showed me how to fold a 10 Egyptian pound note and shake hand every morning. And every morning I'd show up and he'd say, "Your papers, please," and I'd shake hands and he'd slip the 10 pound and I got in. And this is how you do business. This went for 5 months.
Oh man.
Different guards on Wednesday, But yeah, it was kind of a crazy place.
That is wild.
Yeah.
And have you ever been back in the Middle East since then?
No. I've been a lot of other places, but not there.
Yeah, you guys do a ton of travel. You do a lot of travel around motorcycles, right?
Well, we do trials, which is not dirt bikes. It's, for the listener, just put in observed motorcycle trials. And you'll see these guys riding motorcycles without seats over rocks and logs, doing strange things, with the idea that they can negotiate up to some obstacle or some little trail or track without ever putting their foot down. If you put your foot down, you take a point. For some reason, my adult children got me into that when I was 48.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. So we go to one event a month. New Mexico has, the team in New Mexico has one event someplace in the state once a month. So it's whether it's Roswell in the fall, which is down south and warm, or it's up at the ski area at Sipapu, or 9,000 feet riding on ski slopes. Kind of fun. There's not many places in the world you can ride a motorcycle up and down a ski slope.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool. So we do that, and then my sons and I have taken big trips: South Africa and Namibia, New Zealand, drove across Australia on motorcycles, and most recent trip was Sardinia for a week on scooters.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know you did that.
Tim went.
I knew
you guys were talk to us at all.
Well, I knew you guys were in Italy, but I didn't know that you were in Sardinia.
The whole point was for Tim and I to go ride scooters in Sardinia, and then everyone else added to our trip.
Yeah.
And so our 1 week, 11 days to go ride scooters in Sardinia turned into be an 8-week thing and blow a lot more money. And we got down to 5 days actually on scooters because the rest of the women folk decided to, hey, you're not going without us.
Yeah.
So, including the granddaughter.
I don't blame them for that.
No, it was way fun. No regrets. It was great. So.
Yeah, I mean, what's the best? Like, what's the most memorable of those trips? What's the one that you would do again if you had to pick one that you've already done to go back and do again?
I would go through Namibia again, but that is one you got to go with somebody else because that's likes desert.
Yeah,
because it was harsh to go with like my wife. New Zealand was absolutely wonderful. It was great. Or anywhere in Italy. Anywhere in Italy is great.
Really?
Oh yeah. Anywhere in Italy, Northern Italy, Southern Italy. We've rented cars there. It's just wonderful. Germany's pretty easy too.
Yeah.
It's easy. Germany isn't as exciting as Italy though.
Right.
Yeah, for us.
What makes Italy more exciting than Germany?
I think probably the food and the houses and the history and just the setting is more. Germany looks like the Midwest.
Oh, does
a
it?
lot. Yeah, it's got those same pointy roofed churches and stuff.
Yeah.
It's all fine, but it's not. It's not like Italy. Italy's way more fun. But southern Spain is great. But I didn't mention Argentina.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, Argentina. I would really like to ride from Ushuaia up here, but I got to do that soon because that's a 30-day motorcycle ride.
Yeah, Ushuaia is the
Tierra del
national
Fuego.
park in Argentina that is in the far southern tip of the South American continent, Tierra del Fuego. Yeah,
it's like 30 days to get up to Mendoza, which is a long way up the east side of the Andes.
Yeah. Mendoza is wine country?
Yeah, it's wine country.
Yeah, we
Salta is tobacco country.
Right after I don't know that we were on the ranch yet, but Caitlin and her folks and I went to Argentina, and we didn't get as far south as Tierra del Fuego, but we...
Did you go to Bariloche?
We did.
Torres de Paine?
We spent a couple days in Bariloche, and then we were in Mendoza and Cordova, and of course...
Buenos Aires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Caitlin and I did a quick little trip that we told a story about to fish for golden dorado on the far up the Rio Paraná, like a 6-hour bus ride out of.
See, and you travel.
I'd love to travel.
You love to travel for fish.
Yeah. All right.
Motorcycles.
Well, I mean, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it's one
It's
of
not
those.
the place, it's the journey.
Yeah. And it's the cultures and, it's all the other things. I feel like you have these core things that you like to do. Like, right, for you, it's motorcycles. For me, it's fishing or hunting. But it's the experience that grows around that. It's not really the activity. I mean, I really enjoy the activity, but, I would love to go to Italy. Like, they catch bluefin tuna off of Sicily. Like, wouldn't that be so cool? As just, again, as a core or as a kernel for like a day or two of a trip. Like, I could make a 3-week trip out of a couple days of that.
There's a lot of wisdom in that, and I think a lot of people try to figure out, well, I want to go traveling, I want to do, but what am I going to do? Well, don't worry about that. If you just think there's a dirt road somewhere in Namibia, I want to ride down that road and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
Build it around that.
Right.
The rest will happen.
Right.
The rest will happen. If you want to just go ride over a rock in Roswell, just getting to Roswell, getting loaded, packed, the time. It's like we have like a NASA problem. It's getting off the launching pad, getting scheduled, getting funded,
right,
getting the time to actually launch, and then they have the countdown and somebody messes the countdown up for you. But if you can get launched, doesn't matter what you're going to go do, now you're going.
Right.
And that's the fun of it. That's where the fun begins. Even if you make a turn and you don't really head to the moon, you just go around the earth. It's cool.
Right.
Right. So,
no,
but you have to have a reason to go through that mission. We're going to Mars. Nah, we're really going to shoot somebody up there and see if it works. But we'll say Mars so we have a goal.
Right.
And if I'm going to go catch a fish in Norway. Okay, great. Right. You can catch a fish anywhere. That's not the point. The point is the adventure, the journey.
I think, when we came back from Norway this summer, somebody asked me, about it and what we do different. We talked through that a couple times. And it's like, the thing that stands out for me about my fishing trip to Norway is I probably could have spent 3 or 4 days fishing instead of 6 or 7 and spent the extra days that I had just doing a little bit more travel. I would have lamented the trip had I not gone and fished where we did because I wanted to see that and experience it. But I think the journey is just as or more important. Like I could have seen a little bit more. I could have maybe driven up the coast road, or we could have driven from Tromsø up to Soroya, way up north where we were. And I think I would have enjoyed that as much or more than the extra days of fishing that we got instead of doing that.
Well, it's the same thing with motorcycles. Motorcycles are, you're outside. It's cold. It's noisy. You're talking to yourself, if you're talking at all. And, when we go around, my wife and I, we wander around, and she usually follows me in a truck. And I usually ride a motorcycle. So she's in the truck, I'm in the motorcycle, dirt roads. But occasionally, I start out with the morning with her, and we start talking, we start visiting, and we start seeing canyons. We're sharing that. I never get the motorcycle out of the truck.
Yeah.
We went there to ride motorcycles, and her followed me in the truck. I spent the whole day in the truck talking to her. And boy, I never regret those. Those are always wonderful.
Right.
Okay, so that's the fun. If we got to where we ran out of things to say, but if it's really beautiful and the road is really technical, I'll get the bike out. But if we're just having a great time at the scenery, I forget to get the bike out, and then a whole day went by. We both had a great time.
Sure.
That's the journey.
The beauty of travel.
That's the beauty of travel.
Oh, man. Well, thanks for doing this, John.
My pleasure.
This has
fun.
been really fun.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that we've left about 100 stories or 1,000 stories or an untold number of stories untold. So we'll do it again.
Okay, cool. All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks so much.
Pleasure. Call me anytime.
I will. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. As always, you can find all of our content on our website, www.outdoorrules.com. If you want to come and check out Santa Fe Skies RV Park, which I really recommend that you do, what's the website again?
SantaFeSkiesRVPark.com.
Right on.
Look at our pictures, look at our sculptures, look at our views. We're very proud of this place.
Yeah.
It's not a normal RV park.
It's really not. You should be very proud of it. It's very nice. All right. And check us out on our Instagram page at Outdoor Rules. And as always, best thing would be to send us an email. Any questions you got or episode ideas or anything you want to talk about, that's outdoorrules@gmail.com. Thanks again, John.
You're welcome. Take care.
great outdoors, mixing history, laughter, love, and folklore. Creating memories with family and friends. These are the trophies that matter in the end. Outdoor rules.